Georgia's a battleground state that's expected to be fiercely competitive between Biden and Trump. Do you worry that the type of voter suppression that we saw this week was a dry run for the November election? Is there time to fix it? And what about the type of psychological effect that will happen that you write about in your book? Because this type of voter suppression may convince people like your grandmother that it's just not worth voting, that their vote won't happen, their votes won't be counted.
One of the things that's most dangerous is indeed the dry run Republicans are holding across our country. But it's also why we created Fair Fight 2020. We started this in August of 2019 because we knew we needed to use the primaries in every state to understand what the playing field was going to look like for voter suppression. There are those who are concerned that we couldn't stop it. You can't stop what you don't know is going to happen. And so in every state, the 18 states where we're supporting voter protection teams, these are all battleground states where we are learning what they're doing. We're collecting stories that can be used for litigation and for training. And we're doing our best to make sure we know what's at stake so that we can use the next 5 months to fix the problems. That's what Fair Fight 2020 exists for. But it also exists, as you pointed out. I talk about my grandmother and the fact that when she had the first chance to vote in 1968, she was afraid to do so because she remembered what and how vicious voter suppression felt. And she was not afraid that she didn't have the right. She was afraid to use that right. And so the work that we're doing through Fair Fight 2020, Fair Fight Action, and the reason I wrote the book is so we can confront the fears and start to work on enlisting people in fighting back. What we know, what we're seeing in these demonstrations, is that people are tired. They are exhausted by the systemic inequities, by the racism. They are exhausted by a federal government that refuses to acknowledge that more than 100,000 people have died from a disease that if we had simply done our job could have been mitigated. They are tired of the lack of leadership. They are tired of the malice, and they want better. And what we saw in Georgia, as devastating as the election process was, it was also a celebratory moment because we saw more people turn out in this primary than we saw turn out in 2016. That means that the conversation is working. We want people to be angry about voter suppression, not defeated by it.
And is there, I mean, I feel there's a huge debate being waged in the country about the best path forward towards police reform, because I don't believe you should get rid of the police, but you can't not see that we have an issue. So are you a supporter of shifting how we are policed? Or do you think it's better to just think about getting rid of it? What's your take on it? Because Biden says he wants to shift towards making it better.
I think we're actually creating a bit of a false choice. No one should believe that police brutality should exist in our country. No one should believe that systemic racism anywhere. And no one should believe that systemic racism, that systemic inequities, that the challenges we face with drug addiction and mental health issues, that those should be allowed to run rampant and to only have one solution, which is criminalization. What people are talking about is transformation. We have to rethink what we do because what we're doing doesn't work. And I think what Vice President Biden has called for is part of that solution. But we also have local elected officials, mayors and police chiefs and sheriffs and DAs that all have a part of fixing the systemic inequities in our justice system. Because as much attention as necessarily is focused on George Floyd, we still have the challenge that we faced here in Georgia with Ahmaud Arbery being murdered in the streets by vigilantes using citizen arrest laws. And those laws were designed to terrorize Black and brown folks. We know that those laws have to be repealed by state legislatures. We know that cities have to remove their no-knock warrant rules that allow Breonna Taylor to be murdered in her home. And so our broader conversation has to be, how do we transform what we see as public safety so that the entire public can be safe?
Stacey, you recently said that we are, quote, living in the early stages of an authoritarian regime, and you compared the United States to Turkey under Erdogan, and you said that the U.S. Senate is supporting this. So Erdogan has jailed more journalists than anywhere in the Western world. He's a horrific, murderous dictator. Do you really think it's fair to call the United States no better than Turkey?
I didn't call it no better than Turkey. I said that we're on the path to populist authoritarianism, similar to what we saw with Erdogan. Erdogan was a democratically elected president who over time diminished the utility of the courts by packing it with people who supported him. He eliminated the voices of those who were supposed to be the independent guardrails on democracy, and he used that power to call for militarization of their public institutions. We are seeing evidence of that in the United States. Now, I'm not comparing apples to oranges, but I'm saying that they are all fruit of the same poisonous tree, and we need to take steps now to ensure that our presidency is not a gateway to the type of authoritarian regimes we've seen in Turkey, we've seen pop up in Hungary, what we are watching happen in India, what Jair Bolsonaro is trying to do down in Brazil. We have to acknowledge the authoritarian nature of Donald Trump, and we've got to nip it in the bud if we want democracy to continue here and if we want to continue to be the moral leader abroad.